Hey everyone, I'm going to do another fan requested video topic today. And again, as usual, this is going to be another top 5 or 5 good, 5 greatest, whatever you may have you, which totally pirating, but that's okay. So, the requested was 5 rewarding colubrids to work with. And so, kind of the question with that is what exactly do you define as work with? Do you mean keep? Do you mean interact with? Do you mean successfully breed? What exactly do you mean by that? So I'm going to kind of put it all together in the same thing and kind of talk a little bit about all of those, about basically, is it a really fun species to work with? Do they have a lot of personality? Are they a challenge? Are they easy? Is it difficult to breed? Is it rewarding once you do get them to breed? Do not a lot of people do that? All of that thing, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about all of the different species. So we're going to get right into it with one of my new favorite species. And hopefully she doesn't fight me too much on this one. So, the LA or Louisiana pine snake. So LA, being the abbreviation, not from Los Angeles. I know that's just the label that I put on all the tubs, and so I just call the LA pine snake. This is Hopi. This is our female. She's 2 years old. She is actually a lot nicer than her boyfriend. She is in the Pituophis genus. She's in her very own species. There's no subspecies, the Ruthveni. They are North America's most endangered snake. They're really cool. They, unfortunately, through to a lot of habitat destruction, loss, and fragmentation, reintroducing them can be difficult. Although recently the DFW Zoo, the Houston Zoo, I think, and the Tennessee Zoo have done quite a bit of work in reestablishing them. They are a protected species. We can keep them as pets. You just need to have special permits and things if you're planning on shipping them or buying them in from out of whatever state you happen to be in. These guys are really cool because, as I mentioned before, in the Pituophis genus, they also are in the genus of the bulls and the gopher snakes. So they are known for basically two big things. And apologies for the dog barking in the background. We're dealing with puppies. It might get a little choppy, so apologize for some hard cuts if this happens throughout the video. They are known for two basic things. One is their keeled scales. So unlike with ball pythons, boas, and even corn snakes, they have keeled scales, which are kind of rough, very similar to that of a rattlesnake, and they can actually rub those together to make a little bit of sound, not like a saw-scaled viper by any means, or a file snake or an egg eater, but they do have really cool rough scales that feel fun. And the other one is their attitude. They are very defensive snakes. They are always the first choice to run away, like pretty much every animal if it's being confronted by a predator, but it will get defensive and it will hold its ground if it feels it needs to. And it will rise up a little bit, and it has a modified glottis, which is the little tube that they use to breathe. We have them too, but theirs are modified, that allows them to produce incredibly loud hissing vocalizations. These guys are really, really cool, and I love all the Pituophis genus, and I'm really excited to be working with as many species of them as I can. Sorry, Hopi. The other really cool thing about this, so that's the fun part about a little bit of their history. Their personalities are fun to work with, and as I said, she is much more amiable to handling, to pictures, to everything. Her boyfriend, not so much. He hates my guts, and that's okay. We still like him too. But the other one, so the other part that I talk about was breeding. As I said before, these guys are endangered species, but again, we are legally allowed to have them through the right means, through keeping track of bloodlines and things like that. But these guys, part of the reason, in addition to the deforestation and fragmentation of habitat and loss and things like that, is they have very small clutches. They do not produce very many eggs at all. In fact, they say if you produce an animal that has more than, I think, 6 eggs, then it more than likely it's been interbred, or it's a hybrid of either a northern or a southern pine snake. And so they have very small clutches but very large eggs. And I've talked about it in the Louisiana pine snake species spotlight video. But they have large eggs, so when they pop out, they can eat small adult mice sometimes. They're huge babies. So they're just really cool, and I love them to death. And I'm gonna try to move on. I just get so fun. It's just, I really love it when Hopi is putting up with me, because I don't get to mess with her nearly as much as I get to do the northern pine snakes, any of them. And so it's really fun now that she's getting a lot older. She's not nearly as I don't like to use the term pissy, but she's a little bit more handleable and more patient with me. So I'm just really enjoying this right now. I'm really sorry. I just really like hanging out with her. She's really great. I love the pits. But with that being said, we'll put her back. I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to miss you already. I'll play with you after the video, actually. And the next one is this one, which is another one that I have that I'm really excited to be making with because they have a little bit of local history for here in Colorado. And that is the Rhino Rat Snake. If she will let me grab her, please. Sorry, they're all in these little holding tubs, and she's just decided to latch onto that. Okay. So, the Rhino Rat Snake. This is a very odd species of Asian rat snake. They're not the only species of snake that has this weird little, if she will look this way, there we go, that has this weird protuberance. There's a couple leaf snakes that have these as well, but the Rhino Rat Snakes are definitely the most famous or popular or well-known of them, and these guys are really cool. So there's not a whole lot of like true green snakes outside of like venomous vipers and elapids. You have like rough green snakes, smooth green snakes, and then like these guys. And yeah, there's some other ones in that I'm obviously forgetting about, but like these guys, I love these guys. I'm a lot easier to keep than any of the green snakes. But when I mentioned before that they have a fun little history, at least here in Colorado, there was a pet store, zoo, herpetological thing up in Colorado called Pro Exotics that was established for a very long time, kind of in like the breakout period of the herps, like the herp hobby really exploding. They would be getting in imports that hadn't been in the United States before, that zoos weren't even working with, like the first ones in the country in the private sector to get them. And they had that with quite a few species. And one of the ones that specifically a guy named Rob Stone has now kind of made it a thing for himself with High Plains herps, is working with the Rhino Rat Snakes. Colorado were the first ones to get rhino rats. Some got moved to the zoo, and a lot of them were kept. Unfortunately, there was a fire that happened in Pro Exotics, and they're no longer around, but a lot of the foundation animals are still kicking it around. These guys, so it's a really fun little bit of history. These guys are really cool, and while they're uncommon, they're not rare in the hobby, not a whole lot of people do work with them. And as far as I'm aware, I've listened to podcasts and read articles from Rob Stone and High Plains that they don't seem particularly difficult to breed. They're just a little bit different because, you know, they're the Asian rat snakes, so they need to be kept cooler. Like the low 80s is the warm spot for these guys when you think like Asian rat snakes. So they're really like, you keep them almost like a crested gecko, like room temp with high humidity, and they're really cool. They're fairly arboreal. They're not like they're a semi-arboreal. So not like a green tree python where they're in there all of the time and that's where they are until they like lay their eggs. But like think of like a carpet python or like a vine snake where they're in the trees a lot. That's where they spend most of their time, but you will find them on the ground as well. And that specifically goes for her too. I have in her little setup that she has a nice little hide on the bottom, but lots of pieces of bark and things that she can crawl up on. And she will absolutely make use of that. The Japanese rat snake does it too. And that's for pretty much a lot of the Asian rat snakes are semi-arboreal. The Thai bamboo rats, not so much. But these guys are really cool. Supposedly they're not really difficult to breed. These guys go through an autogenetic color change as they get older, also similar to the green tree pythons. So, you know, when you think of green tree pythons, they're born bright red and yellow, and then they slowly turn into the green or the, you know, the blues or all the other fun ones that we've bred into them now, or selectively held onto and bred for them. These guys are born kind of like a slate gray with that, they still have that really cool like black eyeshadow, like stripe across their eyes, and then as they get older until they're about, you know, depending on the individual, they about a year older, so they will turn this really green color, and some of them even have this like really cool turquoisey blue color to them. And I just really look forward to working with the species, and I think they're really cool. So we'll put her back, and hopefully she won't give me a run for money putting her back in the tub as much as she did taking her out of one. The next one I don't actually have, and there's several reasons for that, and that is the indigo snakes. So the indigo snakes belong to a genus called Drymarchon, which is a large colubrid non-venomous snake species. So these guys are bigger than any of the Pituophis, the bulls and the gopher snakes. And we all know we've seen some pretty big bulls out there. These guys are North America's largest colubrid snakes, and in the same genus are the Crebos. So they're the largest genus of snake in the New World, at least the colubrid snake, and kind of in general outside of like, boas, because obviously they're boa constrictors. The largest species, the largest genus and or family of colubrid snakes. Sorry, a little bit repetitive. I just wanted to clarify that. I stuttered a little bit there. They're really cool. There's several different species of indigo snake. There's the eastern indigos, there's the Texas, there's the Mexicans, and they're all really cool, and they're all known for a very striking thing, and that is being big and usually being black, almost solid black in some cases. The Mexican indigos have a tendency to either kind of have like a yellow-white underbelly or a red underbelly, and the eastern indigos can have a little bit of kind of like red blazing on their like neck and cheek a little bit, and very similar with the easterns too. Sorry, that was the easterns, the Texas indigos. The eastern indigos are an endangered species, similar to the Louisiana pine snake, Hopi, where you need special permits if you're trying to buy them from breeders outside of the state, so that way they can be kept track of. If it's in the state, it's more on the breeder to keep track of that. And there are a few people here in Colorado who do breed them and do keep track of all of that. One of the reasons why we don't have one yet is because these guys get very large and they like to move. The Orient Society, which is a group that does work with the eastern indigos, the Texas indigos, and the Louisiana pine snakes, found that some male some male eastern indigos would travel almost up to a mile in their range within a week. It was insane how much they were moving when you think about a snake that doesn't move a whole lot. These guys were just cruising, and whether or not it's just because food is difficult for them to find in their fragmented habitat, whether they're looking for mates, we don't really know, but he would do that a lot. So I want to give them at least a 6-foot long cage with lots of room to climb and move around. But I don't have that yet, so yeah. They're really cool. Their breeding is a little bit different than a lot of other colubrids. They breed at different times than most of the other ones do. So like most of the time we're pairing them after they come out of brumation, like in early spring. Like depending on where you live, like around February, March, we're bringing colubrids like corn snakes and king snakes out of brumation, and then we're going to start to pound them with food and put them together. These guys breed much later, so it's a little bit different, and you need to kind of work with them. So it's kind of relearning a new skill on top of stuff that you already know once you've learned to work with other more common species of snake. So that's why I think they're really fun to work with. And so this next one, I feel like a lot of people might be like, really? No, come on, really? But I have a valid reason for it, and I will explain it right now. So number 4 on the list is just corn snakes. And I say just corn snakes like I'm even just that in itself is putting them down a little bit. I think corn snakes can be a very rewarding species of colubrid to work with for several reasons. Number 1, they have really fun personalities. You can have corn snakes that can be feisty and fiery. You can have some that are super chilled and laid back. You can have some that are just kind of a mix in between. They're really cool. It's kind of like, how ball pythons get the reputation for being pet rocks? Well, some of my most offensive and reactive snakes are ball pythons. And corn snakes, I don't have a lot. I just have these 2 because we lost our 2 older females last year. So we just have this normal looking one, and then we have an amelanistic or an albino one. And that's it. Those are the only ones that we have because we just have the little babies. And I'm not really planning on breeding them. I'm going to use them for educational videos and presentations and things like that. But these guys are really cool for a number of reasons. In addition to just their personalities, they kind of fit a need that a lot of people have that once they get introduced into snakes is through the ball pythons with the breeding and the morphs and stuff. These guys have not nearly as many, but they have a tremendous amount of morphs and mutations and patterns just like the ball pythons do. A lot of the difference is most of theirs are recessive. So that gets even trickier. So when you're trying to play mad scientist, that makes it even more fun. There's a lot of crazy combinations out there, and because they're all recessive and people would just kind of put them together, you can end up with a normal corn snake, and this one could be het for anery, AML, for lavender, we don't know. Won't know until you breed them, and since I don't plan on breeding corn snakes, probably not going to happen. Or I'm really not planning it. There's a couple morphs out there that I think are really cool that maybe eventually I'll get, like the palmetto or this other one called either a cinder shatter or just a shatter. It's a really cool animal. But they fill that need. They also have localities. Not nearly as many as some other things like, with the pine snakes or some of the boas and stuff. But they have, and again, sorry for the dog barking in the background. Puppies are fun. But they do have specific localities. Like there's Miami phase of things that are found specifically around like the Miami-Dade region in Florida. The Okeetees, that everyone can hear that sound before. It's actually originally called from the Okatee forest where they were originally found. Now they just kind of refer to it as like nice big thick black saddles. So, this one not an Okatee, just a normal looking red corn snake. But that's okay. We still like it. I like the normal looking snakes. Everyone likes the morphs and stuff. I like normals. I have normal ball pythons too. Meh. But I think they can be very rewarding. They're easy to breed, so if you like to breed snakes and you like to see the little baby snoots pooping out of the eggs, the corn snakes, it's great. You got great personality, you got the morphs, they stay handleable size, they're easy to breed, they're fun to breed, so it's just really, really cool. And yeah, I just really like corn snakes. So this last one, and you know what? I'm going to put this one back and I'm going to bring out Hopi again because I had so much fun with Hopi. That's what we're going to do. So this last one is going to feel a bit like a cop-out, and most of you probably already knew it was coming, but it's just what I got to say. The number one snake or the number one colubrid that is the best to work with and the most rewarding, it's just whichever one you really like to work with. It doesn't matter what kind it is. And like I said, I know that seems a bit like a cop-out, but that's really the case. It's your passion and love and interest for whatever it is. That's what you'll get the most rewarding parts of. I absolutely love playing Dr. Frankenstein with all the morphs of the ball pythons and even the boas, but once I discovered the vast world of colubrids and discovering the likes and patterns and colors of which I've never seen before. Anyway, I just realized that there's a whole world out there outside of morphs, and every single species is drastically different, and I love that so much. And then I, was given Moose, our bull snake, that he's just really fun. I love his personality. He's huffy. He's defensive. He's not striky. I like his behavior. It's so much different than the boas and the corn snakes and the king snakes and they're all so different from each other. And so I got into that and I learned about the pine snakes. And those are super cool and I really love working with them. And I just love this. And they all have such really cool, interesting stories. And not to say that, a corn snake doesn't have a really cool story or background behind it, like Pro Exotics having a fire and losing a lot of their animals, but just like, base animals are like the foundation of the really cool stuff, or like the most endangered snake in North America. They're still really fun to work with. They all have really cool stories and history that if you like that, because obviously I'm a history dude too, so I obviously fall into that. But just their personalities are so really cool. All of their different husbandry needs are all just a little bit off where you can make it work. But I have fun sitting there like dialing it in and like finding, because some of them are in racks, some of them are enclosures. I like finding like where in the rack system works best for like their natural habitat and where it will be, and changing up their substrates and watching them interact with the stuff whenever I change it up. It's so cool. So whatever it is, whatever species of colubrid snake that you like to work with, if you like Asian rat snakes and that's what you find rewarding, if you want to go and find a species like the big Indian rat snakes, which are like the longest colubrids in the world that can reach like 10-12 feet, and that's what you want to work with and you find that rewarding, have at that. If you like breeding, black and white cow kings and you love just their feisty food responsive attitudes, that's great. If you like working with endangered species or like little known localities, like there's a whole locality of northern pine snakes, the cousins of these, that almost look like them. Instead of that like white and black that you normally see when you think of like a northern pine snake, they're like bumblebee black and yellow like these guys, and that's just super cool. So again, I keep repeating it. I know it seems a bit like I'm just like, copping out and giving it to you how you want. But that's truly what it's about, is that whatever you find interesting and cool and you want to put yourself into, that's the rewarding part. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. I know I, didn't try to touch on like a whole lot about all of them, but the Louisianas and the rat snakes, I have their own species spotlight. You can check out that playlist and you can see their videos, and I talk a lot more extensively about them. But maybe it gave you an idea about, something that you want to get into, or maybe like kind of which would be really cool, reignite like a little spark of flame of interest or desire or passion in a particular project or interest. It doesn't even have to be snakes, just something like that. If you hear this weirdo on the internet talking about snakes and you're like, man, he is really fired up about that yellow snake on his head, that's really cool. I want to get into this. He sounds super cool. I want that. Then that's awesome. That's what it's all about, is the passion and everything like that. So again, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you took something from it. If you have any questions, comments, ideas for future videos just like this, I love getting the feedback from all of you who do watch and do support me. I absolutely love it. I appreciate you guys so much. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.